Yesteryear ghost sightings are all the more powerful when they come from a reputable source, in this case a high-ranking politician and reformer. Lord Brougham was a British peer of the 19th century, a lawyer, Whig politician and former Lord Chancellor, whose autobiography was, strangely, published 3 years after his death. One reason for this may have been that it contained 2 accounts of ghost sightings from his lifetime, perhaps something he viewed as a potential source of embarrassment. As a young man, Brougham was a student at Edinburgh University when he and his best friend Gordon would often discuss the possibility of the immortality of the soul, its future state, and whether the dead were able to appear to the living. In his autobiography, he wrote of an agreement that the 2 youths had drawn up which, dramatically, was written in their own blood. They agreed that whoever died first would appear to the other and thus resolve any doubts they had regarding life after death. After they completed their studies at the college and graduated, Brougham states that Gordon obtained a job in the civil service in India, where he had then moved to live permanently. He rarely wrote to his former friend, and finally they had lost all contact. Brougham writes that, after a lapse of a few years, he had almost forgotten him, particularly as Gordon's family now had little connection with Edinburgh, where he continued to live. Some years later, Brougham was travelling in Sweden with a friend and, following a freezing day of trekking, was trying to warm up by soaking in a hot bath. After some time, he turned his head around to look towards the chair where he had left his clothes as he was about to get up out of the bath. To his shock and amazement, on the chair sat Gordon, looking calmly at him. Having not even thought about Gordon for many years, he was so shaken by the apparition he practically fell out of the bath and found himself sprawled on the floor. By this time, the startling vision had disappeared, but Broome was so strongly affected by its occurrence that he wrote down all the details he could recall about it, including the date, December 19th. He even wondered if he had fallen asleep and it had been some kind of vivid dream. He again pondered the fact that for at least 60 years he had had no communication with Gordon, nor had there been anything to recall him to mind, let alone anything about his family or even India. Now remembering the discussion the pair had had as students and the bargain they had made, he could not help wondering if Gordon had died and had appeared to him as proof of a future state. He did not speak to his travelling companion about his experience, but on his return to Edinburgh there arrived for him a letter from India. The letter had been sent to announce his former friend Gordon's death and stated that he had died on the 19th of December. Seemingly, Gordon had fulfilled his part of their agreement. Lord Brougham seems to have been a man who was committed to the truth and social justice, having successfully fought to legally end slavery. His own father was a paranormal skeptic and often spoke of an incident he had witnessed as a young man. He had been dining one day in Dean's Yard, Westminster, with a group of his friends, of whom his bestie was a Mr. Calmel. The group of young men had talked about the sad passing of a Mrs. Nightingale who that day had been buried in the Abbey. Someone in their party raised a bet that not one of those present had the courage to go down into her grave and drive a nail into the coffin. Calmel accepted the wager, his only condition that he be permitted to carry a lantern. He was accordingly given access to the cathedral by a door out of the cloisters and left to his own devices. The dinner party, after waiting for over an hour for Calmel to emerge again, began to think that something must have happened to him and that perhaps he needed help. So Brougham's father and 2 or 3 other friends got a light and descended down to the grave. There they found the seemingly lifeless form of Mr. Calmel. He was quickly conveyed to the upstairs dining room, where he lay as he slowly recovered from a fainting fit. As soon as he was able to speak, he declared that he had won his wager and that they would find the nail in the coffin. However, he insisted that the spirit of the deceased woman had risen up and taken hold of him, pulling him down before he could scramble out of the grave. Calmel stuck to his story despite all the scoffing of his friends, but Brougham's father was obstinately incredulous and wanting to himself inspect the grave and the coffin. Grabbing a light, he and some of the group returned to the grave where, sure enough, there was the nail driven into the coffin. But also attached to it was a scrap of fabric from Mr. Calmel's coat tail. Of course, the young men now laughingly attributed Calmel's feeling of entrapment to this minor detail. Despite all his protestations of what he had seen and experienced, presumably his account was never believed.